Messy hair, don't care. Welcome back, guys, and thanks for joining me. Today I want to talk about a case that I really think should get more attention in light of the Black Lives Matter movement and in light of police reform and all the activism that is wonderfully going around the world right now. And I really think this case, while it is 16 years old, it happened in 2004, that doesn't mean that it can't get justice. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be looked into. These two men that I'm going to be talking about particularly today, their family and loved ones are still affected. These are very real people. These are people that this has caused harm to within their family. So I really want to go over this case, and honestly, it gets really muddy and it's gonna make you fucking angry. This case really makes me mad, so I'm gonna make you guys mad too. Because there is it's kind of a good thing in getting people upset with something and pointing out, like, we all need to be angry about this, because I feel like when we're not angry about something that deserves justice, we're kind of being compliant. What am I talking about? Sorry if I keep looking over here. As usual, I have a lot of notes and things I want to just make sure I get to a T with the case. So if you want to keep watching, please do. This case is particularly about a man named Terence Williams who went missing in 2004 in Naples, Florida. But I'm also going to be talking about a guy named Felipe Santos, who he deserves recognition as well, and he also ties into this case. So keep him in mind as well. So Terrance was a 27-year-old man who moved to Naples, Florida from Tennessee. I believe it was Saratoga, Tennessee. And he moved there after his mother had recently gotten married. And Terrance himself, while he was a 27-year-old guy, and he was actually a father of 4. He had 4 children altogether who he really, really loved. And he did leave them back in Tennessee because he wanted to get a better job opportunity out in Florida. So at the time in 2003, 2004, the housing market was doing really well in the area of North Naples, and this prompted a lot more jobs to become prevalent in the area. So Terrance decided not only did he want to move there to be with his mother because he was very close with her, but it also was a good financial move for him, and a good step in becoming a good father because he was having child support financial issues. So Terrance's mother, Marcia Williams, she had gotten married, as I said, and went out to North Naples, Florida. Now, Marcia Williams, Terrance's mother, he really depended on, because Terrance did not have a driver's license, and he had actually gotten a DUI back in Tennessee, and so for these reasons he had lost his license to drive, but he was on his way to getting it back. So when he was in Florida, he relied heavily on his mother and his roommate named Jason Gonzalez to get him to and from places. Terrance got 2 different jobs. He got a job as a construction worker, and then to go the extra mile and get more money under his belt, he got a job as a clerk at Pizza Hut. So as I said, he was reliant on, his roommate Jason and his mother to get him to and from. And because of this, he was going to be getting his license back, and he decided, in the meantime, let me look for a car, because I guess it was going to be roughly 6 months before he was to get his license obtained again. And so in the meantime, he decided to shop around for a vehicle. That way, when the time comes, he would be able to just get on the road and drive. Terrance picked out a white Cadillac, which I guess his mother said that he had a thing for Cadillacs. He really liked the look of the car, and I don't believe it was his first one. I believe that's what they said on Disappear, the ID episode, which is season 5, episode 3. I highly recommend you watch it if you're interested in this case. So on Sunday, January 11th, 2004, after work at the Pizza Hut, Terrance's mother, Marcia, picked him up as usual and brought him back to his apartment that he shared with his roommate, a guy named Jason Gonzalez, as I said before. God, I repeat myself so much. I'm sorry. So she dropped him off back at home, and she said the last thing he had said to her was, "Bye, Mama, I'll see you later." And that just that hits me, man, because I'm 27 and I call my mom mama, and I don't know, just... Terrance, while going into the apartment, he asked his roommate Jason, hey, do you want to come with me to this party? And Jason wasn't really feeling it. He wanted to stay in, and, Terrance was, trying to egg him on and trying to, come on, come with me. And I think this was probably because Terrance needed a ride there and didn't want to have to ask him to just, drop him off at this party and then not know how he's gonna get back. Jason didn't want to go, and so Terrance made the decision to take the keys to his white Cadillac that he had just purchased, and although it was unregistered and uninsured, he decided he was gonna drive himself to the party. Now, when he drove himself to the party, remember, Jason didn't want to go, so Jason had stayed home. And Jason recalls a few minutes after Terrance left for the party, he got a call from Terrance. And Terrance was using a payphone in a shopping center to call Jason. And he said, there were a lot of cops around and he was kind of paranoid. So he wanted him to kind of stay on the phone with him. And he was definitely worried about getting pulled over, and he didn't want to be in any trouble. So he decided to just kind of make himself look inconspicuous. So he pulled into a parking space and used the payphone until he felt like the coast was clear of cops, because I guess there was a lot patrolling that area. After this conversation, it was just a few minutes, Jason said, and the cops must have dispersed because Terrance said, okay, I'm gonna go, I think coast is clear, and Jason said, okay, have a good night. So Jason proceeded to go to bed for the night, and when he did, he left his cell phone on the TV stand in the living room instead of bringing it to bed with him. And this is probably a decision he deeply regrets to this day. And, I want everybody that doesn't remember the year 2004, that age was not like it is today with cell phones and technology. Today, I feel like we take for granted everybody has a cell phone. It's always attached to our hip. We can get into contact with anybody we want almost at any given second, But in 2004, cell phones were not as popular or a necessity as they are now. 2004, it was kind of like a luxury to have a cell phone. They were definitely becoming more popular, but it was definitely not as common. So, it wasn't weird of Jason to leave the cell phone because, it just wasn't like it is today. I mean, I go to bed with my phone every single night, but in 2004, people weren't like that, because not everybody had cell phones. The next day, Terrance didn't return from the party in the morning, and Steven, where the fuck am I getting Steven from? Jason had a missed call on his cell phone from an unknown number at around 4 a.m. It was actually 2 missed calls. Sorry, I misspoke. And he, decided to call these numbers back just to see who it was. And it was a girl that had worked with Terrance at the Pizza Hut. And she said that Terrance had left the party between 5 and 6 a.m. Must have been a banger, because party until 6 a.m. Oh, to be young. I'm 27 too, but I could never do that. When Terrance did not return from the party in the morning, Jason wasn't actually worried because I guess they had this kind of knowing between each other that, if Terrance doesn't come home, it's not really a big deal if it's only for 1 to 2 days, because he could be staying with somebody. He could be staying with a friend. He could be staying with a girl. So it was kind of like a bachelor single guy thing. He's 27 years old, so he told his roommate, hey, if there's a night I don't come home, don't get all up in arms, which makes sense. Honestly, it does. I think all 20-year-olds have not come home at one point, So back to the phone call, the missed calls from the coworker's cell phone that Jason had received, it started to click to him that maybe he was calling to try to get a ride from Jason, get a ride home from the party. So then he's thinking, okay, well, Terrance must have driven himself home with his Cadillac that he took. So because of this prompted Jason to start thinking, what if he got arrested? What if he got pulled over? And what if he got arrested for, you know, driving without a license, registration, untagged car, uninsured car, a plethora of things. So at this time, Jason emailed Marcia Williams, Terrence's mother, in order to let her know, like, hey, Terrance never came home. I'm a little bit worried because, and he told her the story about the phone call from, you know, the coworker, and he never showed back up. And Terrence's mother was very worried because she claims that he never went a day without speaking to her. They were very, very close in their relationship as mother and son. Marcia found out that Terrance had not been to work in 3 days and also hadn't picked up 2 of his paychecks. She was beyond concerned because he was very, you know, on the right track financially, and it would never, she said it was never like Terrance to just not pick up his paychecks or not show up to work. He was very proud of those 2 jobs that he had acquired in Florida. She then went, after gathering this information at Pizza Hut, she then went to the Collier County Sheriff's Department to file a missing persons report. Now, they told her, apparently, you know, he's a 27-year-old guy, he'll come home. And I want you all to know, it is a crime junkie rule that there is absolutely, positively no waiting period to file a missing persons report. I don't give a fuck what the police tell you. There is no waiting period. Now, obviously, if you have somebody that goes missing, you want to try to, like, see if they come home. You know, you obviously, like, if my boyfriend didn't come home for a couple hours, I don't think I drive right to the sheriff's department, you know what I mean? But you know your people. And if you know that, like, something's wrong, then go on your instinct and trust that. And there is no waiting period. A lot of sheriff's department or police departments will say there's a 24-hour policy or 48-hour policy. I've heard a lot. There is no such thing. So fuck that. Fuck that information. It is not a waiting period. It's not true. There is no waiting time. And obviously, like I said, police encourage a search beforehand, and a missing persons report is pretty, I would assume, very lengthy paperwork for them to file. So of course they kind of want to, like, why don't you check if your son comes home in like a couple hours or something like that. But still, it's the point of, I don't fucking care how much paperwork it is. Like, fucking take the report. I know something's wrong with my son, you know? So you don't have to wait. Fuck what they tell you. So then at this time, extended family of Terrance that was back in Tennessee, Marcia had called them and told them the situation on what was going on. So they were helping in the search by calling the sheriff's department, and it was at this point that when the Collier County Sheriff's Department started getting so many calls from the Williams family and extended family from out of state that the police started to take it a little more seriously. It was Terrence's aunt, actually, back in Tennessee, that had uncovered that Terrence's car was in a towing yard. So Terrence's mother, Marcia, went right there to the towing yard and to check the car out, make sure it's actually Terrence's. So when she got there, she checked the car out, and first of all, it's a white Cadillac, and she was like, oh yeah, this is the car. It also had 2 of Terrence's jackets inside, as well as an empty carton of Newport cigarettes, which was the brand of cigarettes that he smoked. So, and she had, like, picked out the car with him. She knew, you know, that it was his vehicle. The owner of the towing company had said that it was a deputy from the Collier County Sheriff's Department that actually called it in to be towed, and I don't know why I said that weird. He called it in to be towed, and this was Deputy Stephen Calkins of the Collier County Sheriff's Department, and he stated on the towing form that it was being towed because it was obstructing traffic in Naples Memorial Cemetery. However, at this time, when Marcia called the Sheriff's Department, because now she has proof that a deputy of their department, you know, towed Terrence's car, she wanted more information about this, and they had no record of a car being towed, no record of Terrance being arrested or pulled over, no record that any police officer had even come in contact with Terrance at all. And there was nothing associated with that vehicle on record. So the deputy that took it did not submit anything except get the car actually towed from the towing company. Very strange. Obviously the police were no help. She couldn't get any information. It was like there was nothing to say that Terrance like had anything to do with law enforcement aside from the towing company. Come on, you're in my way, you're in my viewfinder! So Marcia wanted to see if there were any witnesses to this at the cemetery. So obviously, you know, on the towing record, it showed that it was towed from Naples National Cemetery, or Memorial Cemetery, I'm sorry. And so she went to the cemetery to see if any of the employees had seen it, and there was also a funeral home adjacent to the cemetery. And apparently there were some employees that actually had seen Terrance actually be pulled over. And an employee of the cemetery had told her that she saw a police cruiser pull over the white Cadillac and Terrance get out of the car. And he noted that the police vehicle had its emergency lights on, the siren, but no siren. So just the lights were on in the car, which I don't think is weird. I see cops do that all the time. They just have their lights on when they're pulling somebody over and not the siren, you know. And especially I feel like even in a cemetery, like I don't think a cop would be running their sirens if like it wasn't a real emergency, you know. So the witnesses said that Deputy Calkins was the one who had gotten out of the vehicle, and he had patted Terrance down, asked him to get out of the vehicle, and apparently there was just kind of a short exchange between the two of them. And the witnesses said this wasn't confrontational by any means. Like it wasn't like Terrance was resisting or it was an argument between the officer and Terrance whatsoever. They witnessed just, you know, a little bit of a conversation, Terrance being patted down and then placed in the back of the patrol car. And so then Deputy Calkins asked the witnesses who were there, the cemetery workers, if he could leave the Cadillac there because he was going to be having it towed. So, you know, he asked them like, hey, can I just leave this white Cadillac here? I'm an officer, I'm going to be having it towed. So they told him, yeah, you know, why not? Why would they, you know, tell an officer, no, you can't leave that car here? So after they obliged the officer's request to keep Terrance's vehicle there, they say about 15 minutes to an hour later is what the witnesses said, that Deputy Stephen Calkins came back to the vehicle and actually moved Terrance's vehicle to a position where it was obstructing traffic. So originally, when Terrance was pulled over, according to these witnesses that were there, he actually had pulled over in a proper parking spot. And it wasn't until Stephen Calkins later on, without Terrance, had moved his vehicle to obstruct traffic. So it's like he wanted to make it look like this vehicle had a reason for being towed. And what is even more bizarre is the keys were just found outside of the car on the lawn. How the fuck does an officer just get to take the keys of a vehicle and without the owner's consent and just get in the car, move it to a legal position, so now the car is in obstructing traffic, and then just toss the keys outside the fucking car and leave it there? Like, what? Obviously, too, like, on the towing record, it had said that the reason for the tow and the reason why Deputy Calkins had ordered this tow was because the vehicle was obstructing traffic. But obviously, according to witness testimony, we know that's not true because he himself moved it to obstruct traffic. Like, so the more the family hears, the less sense it fucking makes, obviously. Terrance was clearly in the custody of a police officer, and witnesses have him placed in the back of a cop car, and, you know, the deputy had his car towed, but you know, what did he do with Terrance? There was no arrest. You know, he didn't arrest him for the multiple things of not driving without a license. He didn't arrest him for no registration. He didn't no insurance. Like, if you're gonna take the time to pull over this guy, why didn't you make an arrest? You know, just weird. Or like a citation or anything. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. But Terrance was taken off by the deputy, like, you know, and left his car there. So just very strange. So the family, after hearing all this witness testimony, is relentless on getting more answers from the sheriff's police department. At this time, a dispatcher for the police department actually contacted Deputy Stephen Calkins on his day off to ask him about this. And I'm going to insert this call here, and I think it speaks for itself. Take a listen.
I hate to bother you home on your day off, but this woman's been bothering us all day. You found a car from Vanderbilt on 111th Monday, a Cadillac, you remember it? No. Do you remember, she said it was near the cemetery. Anyway, the people at the cemetery are telling her you put somebody in the back of your vehicle and arrested them, and I don't show you arresting anybody.
I never arrested nobody.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I gotta think about this one for a while.
Are you sure nobody was with that vehicle? It was around 12:30 in the afternoon?
Jesus, I can't do that.
You should be my age, huh?
He signed that shit. Unless somebody forged your name, whatever. So after more pushback from the family, the dispatcher actually made a second call that very same day to Stephen Calkins, and miraculously his memory came back, y'all. So Stephen is questioned and asked to submit an incident report, and on the 19th, which was 8 days after Terrance had went missing, Calkins reports that he saw Terrance's vehicle, the white Cadillac, going down a road called Vanderbilt Road, and Stephen says that it was apparent to him that the white Cadillac was having some sort of mechanical issue. But this is very odd to his mother because, like I said, she was with him when he picked this car out. She also said that she had test drived the vehicle because remember, he didn't have a license. So she drove that vehicle 25 miles to just kind of like hear it and like try to make sure, you know, it's a drivable, safe car. And cars are also very unpredictable. So while Marcia Williams does say like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that vehicle, you never know. Cars can be unpredictable. But at the same time, on that dispatch call, you didn't remember him, but now all of a sudden you remember all of this information about Terrance. So Stephen Calkins in this report also said that Terrance at this time, when he had pulled him over because his car was mechanically not working well, he said that Terrance begged Officer Calkins for a ride to work. And he said he worked at the Circle K gas station in Naples. And he didn't work at the Circle K gas station. Like, there's no record of him working there. But apparently, according to Stephen Calkins, this is where Terrance asked him to take him. And Calkins had said that he originally had asked Terrance to get a taxi cab there and, you know, figure out your own way to work. But he said because Terrance was such a nice guy that he was going to do a favor and help him out. Now, his mother says there are a couple things wrong with this. Number one, as I said, he didn't work for Circle K gas station. He didn't have a job there. He had a job at construction and in Pizza Hut. And, you know, also she says there's absolutely no way in fucking hell that her son would ask a cop for a ride to work. Because I guess, you know, Terrance had kind of a tainted relationship with law enforcement because of his DUI back in Tennessee. And, you know, obviously, like, as a life of a 27-year-old black man, I can see that you have a qualm with law enforcement. So she's like, he would never ask a cop to bring him to work. He would call his mother, or he would call his roommate, or he would walk his ass there before asking a motherfucking officer to bring him to work, you know? Now, Stephen Calkins says that when he dropped Terrance off at the Circle K gas station, it was at this point that he told him, you need to get your registration papers for your vehicle all in check, you need to get an ID, you know, and Terrance had apparently told him that he did have a registration for the vehicle, it was in the glove box, and if he wanted to, he could go back and check. So, apparently, Stephen Calkins did not get this information that the registration was in the glove box when they were with the car. So he left Terrance at the Circle K because apparently he worked there, remember? Stephen returned to the cemetery where Terrance's Cadillac was and searched the glove box for the registration, which was not there. So at this time, it was like, I guess Stephen Calkins was feeling like Terrance was lying to him and being deceptive. So then Calkins decides to call the Circle K gas station in order to speak with Terrance because he thinks he works there, and they told him nobody by that name works here. So at this point, now Calkins called in to dispatch Terrance's license plate number and discovered it had an expired tag. And I'm also going to let you listen to that conversation. It's weird.
Back in his car, I'll be going. Yeah, really. No registration. Well, I was blocking the road about an inch off the road, you know.
You know, and previously, remember, he said that he had pulled over the car because of mechanical issues and, you know, moved it to the side of the road so it could be easily towed by the towing company. But not only is this concerning because the call was made an hour after allegedly driving Terrance to the Circle K. So you drop this guy off at the Circle K and then an hour later you run the tags on his license plate and call it into dispatch. But the language used in this call is obviously a huge policy violation, and honestly it really just grinds my fucking gears. Like, Sagittarius, fire sign. So this conversation between him and his little dispatch buddy, it contradicts everything. Like, at first, Calkins said he didn't pull over Terrance, didn't know, you know, about a guy in a cemetery, couldn't recall. What he's saying on this dispatch call also contradicts what witnesses saw that day. So after dropping him off at the Circle K and going back trying to find his registration and then calling in the license plate number and realizing it has an expired tag, how did you not do all that when you pulled him over in the first place, right? Like, I'm confused by that. So the family now takes this information and goes immediately to the Circle K gas station, and they ask for surveillance footage of the day that Terrance had gone missing. And that was January the 12th. And Terrance was nowhere to be seen on the footage. Employees of the gas station even stated that they did not see the officer or Terrance. They showed the employees his photo. But it also should be noted that I guess this Circle K gas station is a very busy area, and it was 12:30 in the afternoon according to Steve Calkins when this happened, and the calls kind of match up to that. So while it seems like likely, like it's a busy place that somebody's going to see them, it's actually less likely because there's so much hustle and bustle and so many people that it's actually less likely for you to remember a certain person in a busy area. You know what I mean? I mean, regardless, shit still don't add up. So the family became increasingly more suspicious of this officer, Stephen Calkins, and it feels like the more they uncovered, the weirder it got. So they actually filed a complaint against him. The Sheriff's Department actually opened up an administrative investigation against Stephen Calkins. So Internal Affairs looked into it, and I guess this was difficult for, you know, his colleagues because they are looking into one of their own. So to actually avoid any tainting of the investigation or any biased decisions, they had the FBI and the state officials, the state police, look into the case rather than the local department. And very, very quickly, it was figured out that Stephen Calkins had a very, very eerily similar encounter with another man, Felipe Santos. Now, Felipe Santos was a man who went missing just 3 months earlier. And can you guess the officer that he was last seen with? Oh, wait. Stephen fucking Calkins. Felipe Santos was a 23-year-old Mexican immigrant, and he was working in construction. Very similar to Terrance, he did not have a license to drive. And his job, his construction job, was apparently 30 minutes away from his home. So in order to get to work, he did have to drive a car legally. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that and say, like, well, if you don't break the law, blah, blah, blah. First of all, that's not an excuse for anything happening to these men. Second of all, I'll just leave you with this. A woman named Julia Perkins, who is a part of a workers-based human rights organization, she actually said on the episode of Disappeared, she said, quote, he was driving without a license, and not because he didn't want to obey the laws, but to support his family, end quote. And that's just it, you know, like, I feel like a lot of people take for granted, you know, that, you know, when you're a citizen of this country, you can just get a license and things are a lot easier for you, you know, but Felipe wasn't doing this to disobey the law. He was doing this to provide for his family and make a living for himself. So in Felipe's case, on the morning of October 14th, 2003, Felipe left for work that morning and left his girlfriend and his newborn baby girl to go to work at 6 in the morning. And on the way to work, who he also worked with his brothers, and they carpooled there, on the way to work, they actually unfortunately got into an accident. And the first responding officer to this accident was Stephen Calkins. Now, according to the other driver in the accident, Calkins was agitated, and he claimed that he stated, "I'm tired of people driving without licenses." Because Felipe's not at the jail, and he never came home. So his girlfriend and the rest of his family are really, really confused here. 2 weeks after the accident, they received a copy of the incident report that Stephen Calkins had made during the accident of Felipe Santos. This incident report says that Calkins did not arrest him because he was polite and a nice guy. So he gave him a ride to the Circle K gas station in Naples so he could get a call and get a ride home. Like, I can't, man. However, they did figure out that Stephen Calkins issued Felipe 3 different citations. One was for driving without a license, which required Felipe to appear in court in November, and then the other 2 were $1,000 fines, adding up to $2,000 total. And so now, you know, the family of Felipe Santos files a missing persons report and also files a complaint against Stephen Calkins, which rightfully so. And Calkins was made aware that he would be investigated into internal affairs. And, you know, apparently Calkins did have a good 17-year record and was considered like a county sheriff's department hero for some reason. But now at this point, Calkins was more forthcoming and agreed to go along with interviews. So when Felipe never showed up to his court date in November from the accident, and driving without a license, it technically made him a fugitive. But investigators were more concerned with the fact that he was missing, that he was absent, you know, and the family had not had any contact with Felipe, and they learned that Felipe had not picked up his paychecks from his job, which again, he was very financially dependent on this job, and it was out of character for him to just not pick up his paychecks. And their family did live in a situation where they were financially dependent on paycheck to paycheck. So this was extremely, again, odd. Big red flags. Some big red flags that we've seen before, very similar to Terrance. Wonder why. So after a 2-month investigation into Deputy Stephen Calkins, Internal Affairs actually exonerated him and said there was no wrongdoing and that he actually was following protocols and procedures and that they didn't have any evidence of him doing anything wrong. But wait, there's more. 72 hours after Felipe's family got the letter that Stephen Calkins was exonerated and they couldn't find anything in their investigation. Just 72 hours after that exoneration letter went out, this is when Stephen Calkins pulled over Terence Williams. And Terence Williams goes missing under literally almost the same circumstances, bro. The Circle K gas station, the driving without a license, being a person of color, like, it's just too coincidental. So on February 12th, this is 1 month after Terrance went missing, they actually called Stephen Calkins back in for an administrative investigation. But this time they told him that anything he said or gave them could not be used as evidence in a criminal court. He was given a polygraph and actually passed it, which in my opinion means jack shit, because if you guys don't already know, a polygraph is not admissible in court, and innocent people fail them all the time and guilty people pass them all the time. It's really not an exact science, and from what I have researched on polygraphs is if you are a person that is anxious and you're worrying, like let's say, a mother of a missing child gets polygraphed and she's nervous thinking about her son, it could show her as being deceptive when she's not. She's just fucking worried. Like, my ass would fail any polygraph. I'm just too much of an anxious piece of shit that I'm a walking ball of anxiety, so I just feel like I would fail it. Like, if something happened to my boyfriend tomorrow, I would probably be the first suspect and I would fail the fucking polygraph. So you have the right to say no, and in my personal opinion, you should say no. And while it does make somebody look suspicious when they don't want to take a polygraph, I think that's better than knowing you're an innocent person and your results come back deceptive. And there's nothing they can punish you for or get you with for not taking a polygraph. It is your right. So, not getting anywhere, detectives actually ordered a forensic search on Terrance's vehicle to check for any blood splatter or any evidence of a struggle within the vehicle, and they actually also attached a GPS device onto Stephen Calkins' deputy patrol car just to kind of see where he patrols, where he hangs out, if he goes to any suspicious locations. And I guess part of Naples is wasteland, so they just kind of wanted to get all their checks and balances and see if he does anything suspicious. So they did hone in on a couple of these areas that Stephen Calkins happened to patrol near. They got cadaver dogs and did searches for the men, and they didn't find anything. Now also, Terrance had a court hearing back in Tennessee just a few days after his disappearance, which he obviously never showed up to, and his mother remains very adamant that he would never willingly miss this court date because he was so adamant on the path of being a good father and bettering his life that he would never just miss this court date on his own accord. So the Internal Affairs investigators continue to look into Calkins, and I feel like they, just like me, are like, there's something here, there's something too coinky-dink here, too coincidental. And so they actually uncovered a call that was made from Deputy Calkins to dispatch just 4 minutes after he pulled over Terrance. And it also proves he lied. Like, he never disclosed this conversation to the investigators. Like, he never brought this up, but now they uncovered this call, so he can't go back on it. Now, up until this point, Calkins had told investigators that he didn't even know Terrence's last name. The interaction lasted like maybe 5 minutes, but clearly on this phone call, he's requesting he knows his last name, and he even knows his correct birth date, which only Terrance himself would know, which Calkins claims he made up a fake birth date. But how do you make up a fake birth date and actually get it right? Like, the odds of that are just almost impossible. So he once again was called out for his discrepancies, and Calkins actually admitted he couldn't explain the discrepancies and he couldn't explain any of the holes in his story. And they issued him another polygraph, but as I said, polygraphs mean fucking shit, man. And, you know, they're just not it. They're just not it. And they hold no weight in court, legally and scientifically. Now, Calkins insists to this day that the disappearances of Terence Williams and Felipe Santos, no matter how suspicious they are and how similar they are, it was literally just coincidence. And that the last interaction he had with them was after he dropped them off at the Circle K, and he swears that's it. Investigators had no actual probable cause, apparently, to search his home because they were considering getting a search warrant, but I guess they had no concrete probable cause in order to obtain that search warrant, which I just find, like, weird. So on August 20th of that year, the internal investigation into Deputy Stephen Calkins actually ended, and all allegations of him are sustained, but Collins is fired for untruthfulness, non-compliance of rules and regulations, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. 2 weeks later, he appealed this, or at least tried to, and he claimed that the investigators were going after him for political reasons. Wonder why? And his appeal is denied. And the sheriff stated he was very firm in his decision to terminate Deputy Calkins, because he said, I can't trust him anymore. There's too many lies in his story. He lost trust in him as an officer. To this day, Calkins refuses that he had anything to do with the disappearances of Felipe Santos or Terence Williams, and Calkins still remains one of the main suspects, actually. Now, Terrence's mother, Marcia Williams, actually said something in 2017 that I wrote down that I want you guys to hear, because it just really gets me. She told the press in 2017, "You know my biggest wish? I wish I could win the lottery. If I didn't have to work and go on, I could spend all my time searching for my son. Between work and searching for him when I can, I'm tired and I feel so guilty about not doing more." End quote. Just so fucking sad, man. Like, I can't even imagine losing a child and the last person to see them is an officer that is supposed to protect them, right? Now, Terence Williams is presumed dead under Florida law, and in 2018, the family actually filed a wrongful death suit against Stephen Calkins. Attorney Ben Crump is the one that is actually taking care of Terrence's case, and he actually represented Trayvon Martin's family as well, and he's hoping that they can uncover some sort of evidence and present it in the civil lawsuit that could lead to a criminal case against the deputy, well, former deputy Stephen Calkins. In 2019, a judge denied the motion made by Stephen Calkins to dismiss the appeal, or dismiss the suit, the lawsuit, and I guess that's good news, you know? But I really hope that with all this activism right now, that this case gets lit on fire, and I really want this case to get more out there. And this case just, it's like we know Deputy Calkins had something to do with it. Even if he doesn't, it's like he's got to know something more. Like, there are clearly holes in this story, in his story, and two men of almost the same circumstances are missing, and their families were torn apart. This was somebody's father, this was somebody's son, this was somebody's significant other. It's just terrible. Like, sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. And in my opinion, like, it's just so clear that something happened as far as police brutality and police negligence with these two men, and it just makes me so fucking mad. It's like, but whether or not Stephen Calkins is responsible, these men need to be found. Their stories need to be told. While it was 16 years ago, absolutely, that this family deserves justice. This family deserves answers. So if you guys, anybody watching this, has any tips whatsoever on Terence Williams or Felipe Santos, you can contact the Sheriff's Department tip line at 239-775-8477. And I really, really hope that this case goes somewhere, and that's why I'm covering it. Is, you know, not only is it really near and dear to me, I mean, every missing persons case is. I'm an empathetic piece of shit. This is a clear cut case of something happening where a policeman doesn't do his fucking job. I'm also going to link in the description box some organizations to Black Lives Matter and some things you guys can donate to in order to make change in the justice system for Black Americans. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I changed up my scenery a little bit just because my AC is broken in my filming room, so hopefully you guys like it. I don't know how long I'll be here. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of my cat's back there, but he's not. Sorry. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and if you guys have any suggestions of cases you want me to cover, let me know. Thanks, guys. Bye.